Hey, we have recording. All right. You're good to go, kiddo.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything I'm so excited? Like I have my questions, but like I just am so excited to learn. What is there anything you want to really talk about today before we get started?
I can talk about just about anything because
I know.
but
Like
go ahead.
like no topic is left unturned with you. I was like, kind of want to talk about the oxytocin thing, and then I want to talk about trauma, and then I was like, I want to talk about this. Is there something that you're really loving right now or passionate about?
Right now I'm in love with just about everything. So
Yeah,
I'm good
you're in love with life.
in general.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always try to do whenever I'm a guest on somebody's podcast is I do my best to try and target what I talk about to what they're most interested in. And the most frustrating thing for me a lot of times is when I ask the podcaster, what do you want me to talk about? They go, oh, whatever you want. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
It's amazingly untargeted. But I mean, I'm happy to just do random questions, or if you have a list of questions, we can start there and see where it takes us.
Yeah, I think we'll just go there. I mean, I'll definitely get you to talk about yourself a little bit because I love your story and like you did Huna medicine, right?
Oh, I cut my teeth on Huna back in my early metaphysical days. Specifically, the Max Freedom Long version of Huna, not a lot of the stuff that came like Serge Kahili King thing, and a lot of the Tad James people went the Huna direction there. That was
Yeah.
never my lineage. Even though my first NLP cert was through the Tad James system, I was never I never that's not where I learned my Huna. So take that for what it's worth.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll get you to talk about yourself first, talk a little bit about what you do, like how amazing you are,
Okay.
and what got you into what you got into because you got a plethora of skills. And then kind of go into, I like talking about the trauma and the brain and the body and mind body awareness.
Mhm.
And we'll go into that and then just see where it takes us.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead then. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Inner Mind podcast. I don't know what episode this is because I've done so many now, which is a really good feeling. But I'm really, really excited for this guest. Of course, I met him on Clubhouse because where else do you meet incredible people? But I have the one and only Dr. David Snyder. Oh, I'm so excited. Who's recognized as one of the world's leading experts on strategic human influence technologies. He has personally trained members of the legal profession, law enforcement, medical, entertainment system, martial artists, and hypnosis communities. He teaches advanced mind-body techniques, self-improvement, success, wealth, health, and happiness, peak performance, persuasion, rapid healing, relationships, advanced social dynamics, covert influence techniques, and more. He's a licensed and certified hypnosis trainer. He is one of I think you are the top NLP trainers in North America, master practitioner and trainer in neuro-linguistic programming and the Society of, what is this, experiential trance?
Experiential hypnosis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. David timelessly works to develop training and educational opportunities designed to powerfully raise the skill level and professional status of hypnosis and hypnotists all over the world. David, I am so happy to have you today. Thank you for fitting me into your very busy schedule between your workshops and your gallivanting and trainings. I much appreciate it. Thank you for being here today.
It's my pleasure to be here. I met you on Clubhouse so many years ago. Seems like years ago. Time gets compressed on the internet. What was ago is like a decade now, and it's been a great ride. I mean, we met some really cool people. We hung out a lot, and it's just nice to be able to finally show up in your world and kind of talk to your people and see how I can help them.
Yes, I know. I'm really excited. If you haven't noticed. Okay, there's so much that we can go into. We might need to do a part 2 one day. But I want to just so the audience has an understanding of how amazing you are. Can you talk a little bit about yourself, some of your credentials? I didn't even mention, like, you have a plethora of credentials in holistic medicine as well, which is why I was drawn to you so much because, bridging that gap, between the mind and the body is huge. and you have a full understanding of how the body heals, right? And then to apply that with hypnotherapy, that's kind of my jam. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into NLP, hypnotherapy, and all those other modalities?
Well, to start off, I did not start off to be a healer. It was not on my radar back in the day. Back when I first was I was the classic bullied kid. I was bigger around than I was tall. I had little to no social skills, an oversensitive nervous system, and a sincere desire to be liked that often worked against me and was used against me. And so after a certain amount of time, I got really frustrated with the results I was producing in my life. And even as a kid, I started looking for ways to solve those problems. The first thing that really started to attract me was martial arts, primarily because I wanted to be able to walk home without getting jumped all the time, or people knocking on my door say, can David come out so we can beat him up? Really weird things started to happen. But martial arts was kind of my introduction to what I would consider self-improvement, but it was really more of a self-defense and a self-protection. And I really kind of grew up with the idea that I wanted three things out of life. That was to kick butt, be cool, and get lots of chicks. And so most of my studies went in that direction. And almost inevitably, my pursuit of the answers to those questions always seemed to bring me back to some form of personal development and self-improvement. I discovered hypnosis when I was about 11, 12 years old, by accident, really, because my mom would go to this medical doctor to try and lose weight. And he would give her these self-hypnosis tapes. And I asked my mom, well, what's this? She goes, this is self-hypnosis. She goes, what does it do? It goes, programs your mind to do things. I go, really? Wait, what else can you do with it? Right? My 11-year-old mind was having dreams of world conquest. So I started kind of borrowing her tapes. And I started realizing that the power of the mind is really one thing that I can do something about right now. I can start to work on my mind. And I literally got a paper out, and I started just collecting change underneath the sofas. Anytime I could go to a bookstore and find like a hypnosis tape or something like that, I had this map. By the time I was like 15, 16 years old, I must have had 30 different self-hypnosis tapes, and I would listen to them religiously every single night. Then I started to discover girls, of course. And so I started looking for ways to utilize that information for other social applications. And they would always tell me you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that. And there was this little part in the back of my head that would say, bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And in fact, the first time my wife met my mom, the first thing out of her mouth was, the fastest way to get David to do anything is tell him he can't. And so, all these experts in the fields of hypnosis, and I didn't actually discover NLP until I was in my early 20s. Were telling me you couldn't do this and you couldn't do that and you couldn't do this. But there was a part of me that this little bullshit detector was going on. There's something they're holding back. Turns out they were holding an awful lot back, huge amounts. And I just started going deeper and deeper. And so the big fundamental questions for me was, how do I get better at martial arts? How do I get better at being my best me? I guess is the best way. And I call it being cool, right? And how do I improve my social life? How do I improve my, how do I become irresistible? Which was the one moment I remember sitting in my room after being rejected and humiliated at yet another party, looking up into the heavens and saying, I'm gonna find a way to become absolutely irresistible, right? I'm not there yet, at least according to my wife. But anyway, but I'm working on it. And so I just started looking for ways to solve the problems in my life. And I just, every now and then I would spend thousands of dollars or hundreds of hours in a course and to find that one little gold nugget, and I'd find that little nugget and I'd just put it in my back, and I'd move on to the next mine, or the next, metaphorically speaking, and I'd find another nugget and I'd put it in my pack. And 15, 20 years later, I put all my nuggets on the table. I find out they're not nuggets, they're Legos. And you can put these things together in different ways to create different effects. And so I just started saying, well, look, I've solved these problems in my life. These are the solutions I found. Does anybody have these issues? And all of a sudden people started raising their hands left and right. And part of my journey, you were asking about my background in alternative health methods. When, like I said, in my early 20s, I was not focused on being a healer at all. It was just not, I was looking for personal power and empowerment. Right. And so one of my focuses, I thought I was going to be a lifelong martial arts instructor. I thought I was going to have my own school, and I did for a while, but universe had other plans. But one of the things that happened is I discovered this art called Kyusho Jitsu, which is kind of controversial, but it focused almost primarily on how to manipulate the energy meridians and acupressure puncture points of the body. And so before I even thought about going to medical, like 10 years before I even thought about going to medical school, I had thousands of dollars of acupuncture books and charts and these things because I wanted to understand how this system worked so I could use it for self-defense and press. And so
Wow.
I came into the study from a very, very different place. And it was the pressure point work that started to really cement into my mind that this idea of energy, this energy thing that all these martial artists were always talking about was actually a real thing, right? And so once that light got clicked on, because up until then, I've been in the martial arts 10 years, 10 years, and nobody ever showed me anything to do with ki. I mean, they talked about it, but you can break a board without using ki. You just got to hit hard and focus. But the pressure point system that I learned was that first experiential bridge from the purely solid to the energetic and the vibrational, because you can actually test these vibrational relationships. You know, you can touch one part of the body and another and watch it actually you can watch them fall on the ground. It's actually what happens. It's kind of weird because the way the different parts of the body vibrationally relate to one another. So once I realized that that was true, I said, well, what else is true? That was really the big thing for me. It's like, if this is true, what else is true? And the next week, I was literally walking by a metaphysical bookstore, and there was a Reiki. I saw this thing called Reiki. And I was like, I knew the kanji for ki, and I was like, well, I walked in, I goes, what's this? They started talking to me about Reiki. I says, that's interesting. Well, there's a free circle tonight. You want to come in and try it out? And I'm like, cool. So I walked into this Reiki circle, sat down, all the healers lined up around us. This lady put her hands over my head, and I folded up like an accordion. I'm like, and I don't remember anything of the circle because I was in freaking Middle Earth, but I was high for 2 weeks after. I signed up for the class that night, and I got my Reiki master trainer in like 1991, 1992, something like that. So I've been a Reiki master since before Reiki was cool. But that was my next big experiential dive into this world of metaphysics and energy. I always been curious about it, always been interested in it, but nobody could ever produce phenomena. And in my worldview, if you can't like do something, like show me kind of stuff, then I kind of lose interest really, really quick, because everybody talks, nobody walks. You know, and so my first martial arts instructor would always say, don't tell me what you know, get out on the floor and show me. Right. And that's kind of been our whole motto from almost from day one. That's what we call real world hypnosis or real world NLP or whatever, because it's all about any time, any place, under any circumstance, for any reason, can you perform? Can you do these things? And but Reiki was like the first big leap into like energy healing. But again, I didn't go there to learn about healing. I went there to get more chi or more ki so I could zap people better with my Dragon Ball Z thunderbolts and stuff like that. But it's you know, because of my studies in the martial arts, I recognized certain things in the Reiki system that were analogous to some very ancient esoteric practices in the martial arts. And I knew enough about how these things get passed along or not get passed along, as the case may be, that where there's smoke, there's fire. And so I just started studying deeper and deeper into the history of Reiki, where it comes from, the esoteric Nikkyo Buddhist systems, the Taoist systems, all of which use these mudras that I learned in Reiki and are passed through attunements. But that never made it to this country. We only got what Usui and his followers watered down and brought over to us. But there's a lot more to it. And that led me to Huna, and then pranic healing, and then DNA theta healing, and then ultimately to the Bankston system and the study of Hermetics, which is kind of what I bill this as, because everything falls under this Hermetic umbrella. Because once you understand these Hermetic principles that go back to the Emerald Tablet and maybe even earlier, you can start to see all of these different healing systems fit into place, how they mesh with a lot of the ancient martial arts energetic practices and Qigong and Neigong practices. And so so that was kind of my study for a while. I was just doing it independently. And then I got this idea that I wanted to do this in a way that if nothing else panned out, I would have a career to fall back on. So I started looking at all the different things that I love to do. And I was big into behavioral profiling. I was big into influence and persuasion. That was my love. I love the idea, because I had a martial arts background. I love the idea of going into law enforcement. like being Quincy. Like my favorite show growing up was Quincy, the medical examiner show, where he solves all these crimes. And then Mindhunter came out and all this forensic criminal profiling. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a criminal profiler. So I got into a community college. And at the same time, I think I was torn. Like I wanted to study acupuncture because it allowed me to do energy, martial arts, and all these other things and still make a good living because everybody needs healing, right? And I also looked at the forensic side of things. And I sat back and I did a rational analysis. I looked at what police make, the amount of stress they deal with, and promptly chose healthcare. But it was, in retrospect, it was a great decision because I never lost my love for behavioral sciences. In fact, that's one of the things we're known for, is how we integrate all these things together. Yeah. But I went into acupuncture school, and I have a doctorate in Oriental medicine. But I guess, again, I went in thinking of acupuncture as the backup, or Oriental medicine as the backup. Turns out I use my degree extensively every single day, but I don't do it in the traditional way that most people do. I started, once again, because I have this weird brain, I started making all these connections between martial arts and acupuncture and psychology and NLP, and I just started seeing patterns starting to emerge that were the same pattern. And that was that was the big thing that the particular martial arts that I studied and NLP did for me, was it allowed me to see the world through the eyes of process and structure. And I started to realize what Franz Barden came to call the law of analogy, was that the same patterns that govern the universe manifest at every level of human experience. All you have to do is have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and the universe will teach you what you need to know to become the best version of yourself. And that's kind of what took me down this big, long rabbit hole, where I decided that hypnosis, martial arts, all these things weren't different things anymore. They were all different aspects of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And as I started to make that realization, I started putting those Legos together in different ways. And what would happen is the results that we would generate were greater than the sum of the parts. And that's when I started to realize that, we live in a society today that is focused on, and I think it's starting to change, but we're a long way off. That's what I call isolationist or reductionist. In other words, we separate A from B, and B from C, and C from D, and 1 from 2, and 2 from 3. When the true fact of the human being is that we are a synergy. We are a synthesis and a gestalt of all these different systems that come together to create something greater than the individual parts. And so when you look at the therapeutic work and the therapeutic techniques that we do, that's what you're seeing the reintegration of different aspects of the nervous system that other medical disciplines or healing disciplines, they distill down to, language, they distill down to body work, they distill down to energetics and chakra work. But very few of them are reintegrating these things in a way that all the different systems of the nervous, all the different systems of the body and the mind are communicating perfectly towards a common goal. And when you do that, you can get extremely powerful, extremely deep, rapid, permanent change in just a few minutes if the systems are, and you don't have to believe it, which is kind of the funniest thing for me. One of the first times I ever heard that was in the Reiki class. I walked into the Reiki class and they said, you don't have to believe any of this for it to work. And I was like, cool, because I don't believe shit. Right? And it's like, they put the hands on me and I folded up like an accordion, and my life has just been one journey, one adventure after another, one exploration after another. And each person I meet, you included, have given me something that has added another level of depth. Like the one book you recommended to me took me down a whole rabbit hole that allowed me to make discoveries. I never told you about this, so this is all new to you, right? That one book,
I'm like, what? I remember I did recommend a book for you. Yeah.
Sorcery. That book Sorcery you gave me took me down a rabbit hole where now I can actually correlate the different hormonal systems in the body to the Chinese 5 elements, the Hermetic 5 elements, and actually do face reading based on different dominance of hormonal pathways because of that one book. Yeah, it was, and this is how the universe works for me. Is that part of my golden path, which I've talked about from time to time, is to bring these technologies together and out into the world in a way that maybe was lost or hasn't been done before, right? And the way that happens is the more I share with the universe, the more the universe makes sure that I get. And
that's something that you taught me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be honest with you, is that I started to unsubscribe from some of this marketing in the healing world, because healers are not good at marketing. And so then they cling to this idea, okay, you know, come to me. I have this skill, come to me. And you were like, we joked in the back channels, you just give everything away for free. And I was like, wait a second, that's a genius law to live by. It's working for him. How is that working for him? And I just started, it was like, and I've had coaches be like, you need to give more value. And I've had healers say you just need to give more, but it never felt right. But watching you display, and for those of you who don't know about Dr. David Snyder, he will give the shirt off his back if you asked for it. Like, he's just like, gives. And I was like, how is this guy perpetuating the successful business when he's giving everything, like free YouTube videos, which I have consumed? And it's like, wow. And it taught me, like, no, because I think you said this in a room or a talk or a video, you said, you're never going to run out of creativity.
No. And
that's a scarcity mindset, because people are like, what about your content? Right. And I know we're talking business now, but this is such an important concept for people to get in life, is that you are universal source. You are going to continue to recreate and create abundance. Like, you're going to keep. And I was like, oh my gosh. So even if I talk about the same thing, and even if I teach everybody everything, they're still going to like want more, and they're still going to need my help. And so I started just giving and giving. You know, I will give my tips. I will coach people live now. And like, I never did that before. And it's created so much, like, I say wealth in my life, in the sense of, you know, I have a sense of, you know, purpose and enjoyment, and people still need me. And, you know, and the byproduct of that is, yeah, I do get some money in that, but it's just such a beautiful concept. So you taught me that. So I'm really glad there was a good energetic trade there. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, that's the thing. And this is, again, when I talk about eyes to see and ears to hear, we live in the illusion of a linear universe. Yeah. For the most part, the 99% of creation outside of our awareness is not linear, and it's not bound by time. Yeah. So this idea that we have to work, we have to work, but there has to be a balance between the gratitude and enjoyment and the fulfillment we get from it and the money. And that's one of the things I think, and I'm certainly guilty of this, that we tend to lose track of as we get deeper and deeper into the marketing this and the promotion that and the social media this and the social media that, you know. And I think the times when I wind up generating the most wealth is when I stop focusing on the wealth.
Right.
When
it really is the key.
Having as much fun and doing as much work as helping as many people as humanly possible, so I can feel good, and then ultimately help them again. Because I think it's important. One of the things, and I'll let you talk in just a moment. One of the things I think we as healers find the hardest thing to, and I say I'm a healer now. I told you, this is the way the universe. This is what we call a golden path. You have this direction you think your life is going, and it's part of your golden path. And as you achieve those levels, you start to evolve and become something you never thought you would be, and you're cool with it. Even though 20 years ago you said I wouldn't be caught dead doing that, right? Because you're, and this is the important piece, because you're working on yourself. You're following your joy, you're following your bliss, you're getting your issues resolved, you're incorporating all the things that make your heart sing and light you up. And as a byproduct of that, your life goes to the next level. And then we call that the Taoist golden path in some of the systems that I teach. And every culture has some analogous to it. But the truth is that, and all the metaphysical systems tell you that when you start doing this kind of work, the universe conspires to make you healthier, live longer. Doesn't mean you won't have challenges, because you came here to fix challenges, to solve challenges, whether it's Kabbalistic Tikkun or the Taoist golden path or whatever. But the things tend to, if you just keep following that joy intelligently, then the universe will unfold for you in its own time. Certain things are aspects of divine timing. Certain things are things you have control over. And part of the wisdom in the Tao and the Kabbalah is knowing which is which. So
I like that. Oh, that's a big can of worms. Which is which? Oh, the rabbit holes that you just presented today. So it's so funny, Dave, that you said this, because I've always beat myself up because I never became a medical doctor. And by the age of 5, I had announced to the world that I was going to be a doctor.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I was going to be saving the children in Africa and giving them medicines and white coat and stuff. And obviously, because life events, the universe led me a different direction. I just realized that allopathic medicine was not my path.
Mhm.
And then the other day, I had like 5-6 clients messaging me, okay, and now what do I do about this? And like, I sat there on my couch, in my pajamas,
Mhm.
being like, I am a doctor. I am today. I am a doctor. Like, it doesn't look like I thought it would look, but I am healing people every day. I have people that, come to me, come to my office, whatever, or and message me daily asking for help. And I'm like, I am a doctor. It just doesn't, it didn't fit the box of the Western world. It didn't fix my perception in my box of what I thought a doctor was, but I
Like,
really am.
yeah, well, your discovery, like so many of us discover, is that many times the reality doesn't match the expectation.
just did a podcast with Owen Fitzpatrick. And he was talking about expectations. Do you want to touch a little bit on that, the reality and expectations?
Sure. One of the biggest challenge, and I teach a lot on the law of attraction now, and it's one of the.
I know. I wrote down, ask David about manifesting. It's literally on the questions.
It's funny because I went through some experiences early in my vibrational career that caused me to decide that I didn't want to teach energetics. And I would practice it, I would study it, I would learn it, but I didn't want to teach it. No pun intended, I kept it close to my vest. But the universe has other plans, and I talked about this, and I just did my golden path workshop. And one of the things I learned from my teacher, the late Lillian Bridges, was this difference, or maybe it was Joey Yap, both of them said pretty much the same thing, is there's a difference between regular time and divine timing, and that relates to this idea of fate versus destiny.
Mm-hmm.
There are things in your life that are fated. In other words, you're going to run into this person, you're going to cross this street, these things are going.
You can't plan it, you can't predict it,
and you can't avoid them.
Yeah.
But destiny is different. Destiny is a result of the choices you make when you encounter those fated moments. And at every one of those fated moments is a chance to raise or lower your consciousness. And depending on the expectations and the consciousness you have at any given moment, that's the direction you're going to go. The Kabbalists used to say, because there was always this big conundrum of, do we have free will or don't we? Right? And the Kabbalists would say, every possibility that you have is like this is how old I am. It's like a VHS cassette, right? And everything on that cassette is going to happen, right? But every time you meet one of these fated moments, to use the more later vernacular, and you raise your consciousness, you get a new tape. So if you don't change anything about who you are, this is your life. But if you find those moments where you have the opportunity or you work towards raising your consciousness or making your correction or finding your golden path, depending on whether you're doing Kabbalistic or Taoist approaches, you have an opportunity to get a new tape. Right. And so this idea of you can always change. There's very few things that are you can't change. And those things that you can't change, you can change everything that happens in your life and about you when you encounter them. And the things you do before you encounter those fated moments will completely determine the severity of those less than positive events, and even the joy and the magnitude of those positive events. But getting back to expectations, one of the aspects, the physiological aspects of our nervous system, is we do not exist in real time. The best book to reference on that is called How Emotions Are Made. I think it's by Linda Barrett. Is that Dr. Linda Barrett? Lisa Barrett.
Lisa Barrett.
One of the things she's telling us in this book on the theory of constructive emotions is that we don't live in real time. We are constantly predicting what's going to happen a millisecond, 2 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds out, right? And if what we've predicted, the simulation we've run in our head matches what we encounter, everything's fine. But if it doesn't, it literally rewinds our memory, changes it, and moves you forward again. A lot of people, when they create an intention or they set a manifestation, they imagine in their mind what it's going to be like. And the problem is they get too specific. And what I mean by that, I did a podcast with Yogi Brian over at the Yoga Guys. And I said to him, look, when it comes to manifestation, you need to focus on the what and let go of the how. Because when people create a manifestation, they're doing it from this based on who they were in the past, right? One of my more infamous mentors used to say that goal setting was bullshit, because by definition, the person setting the goal is fucked up. Because you aren't the person who can have it, right? And again, I get this little corroboration from all these. Like another one of my teachers in the fashion systems that I studied, Taylor Sinclair, her mother used to say, you can be or do or have anything in this life that you want to have, but first you have to become the person to whom that thing can happen to.
Yes.
And so you see these little connections. This guy over here is saying goals are bullshit because by definition, the person who can have it isn't the person who can get it, or the person who wants it isn't the person who can get it. So there's all these little steps that have to happen of evolution for you to become the person who can have it.
Yeah.
Well, when we set an expectation, we're setting that expectation based on our past and what we think it's going to look like. So two things happen. A, the person that we're operating from doesn't have the tools to recognize how to get there. And B, they think they know how to get there. Well, as your experience and my experience bears out, 99% of the people know exactly where they need to go, but can't get there. Why? Because they don't have access to their subconscious mind, which is the part of you that navigates the non-local universe. You create expectations based on your past. You create expectations based on the information that you have. And so by definition, you don't have those things yet. So you either have to move forward in time to the person who has it and look backwards to see how you got it, which is doable, by the way, or you have to let go of the how, right? Because inevitably, a lot of times, especially people who are less lucky on the serendipity scale, they tend to be hyper specific in each step of the process. And it's that hyper specificity that actually creates a form of blindness to the non-linear opportunities for getting that thing faster and better than if they just let go of the how. Like when I did a class called Get Lucky for Life, which was on the 5 or 6 characteristics that all lucky people share. And one of the contrasts that we drew was naturally lucky people, when they set an intention, like contrast this, the average hardworking person, they'll say, I'm going to go to a doctor, I'm going to be a heart surgeon, I'm going to go to Cedars-Sinai Medical, I'm going to say be a world famous heart surgeon, and I'm going to go to this school and this school, and they have every step of the way past out. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're going to work really, really hard, right? But we're talking about manifestation, not hard work necessarily. A lot of people confuse one, they think manifestation is something for nothing, and it isn't. It's just something for a little bit different stuff. But my point is that when people who are naturally lucky, people who kind of tap into this non-local phenomenon we call the law,
just like create, it just like happens.
Well, what they do, they may have the same vision of being a heart surgeon in their head, but they'll say something as simple as, I'm just going to be a doctor who helps people. Do you see how broad?
Yeah.
How many things can come in and from different angles? Whereas I have to go to this school and I have to get this grade and I have to graduate this time. I have to go. It's this narrowness that of the expectation. This is the only way it can happen.
And that's what I'm describing to you, is that for years I was like, beat myself up because I'm like, I'm straying away from the path. I was supposed to go to Harvard and become a medical doctor. I'm straying. I'm not in Africa. I'm in Canada. Mm-hmm. And it's like, when I let go,
Canada, Africa, same thing.
Same thing, same weather, same culture. When I let go of that, I was like, whoa, like I'm okay with where I'm at right now, because I actually did arrive to where I wanted to arrive.
Just got there different.
But it would have been way less painful, the journey, is if I had just been like, I just want to heal people and help people, right? Or and however that looks, you know, that because we create so much self-deprecation and so much, shame and blame on ourselves when it doesn't turn out the way we expect, quote unquote.
We beat ourselves up constantly.
Yeah. And I mean, especially with relationships, right now, I have a ton of people. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic and the isolation, but I have a ton of clients that are just like either getting divorced or meeting the love of their life, or like, it's all about relationships right now. People will always have health issues, but right now it's all about relationships. And they're like, okay, I met the man of my dreams, but this, and this, and I'm like, okay, but how does he make you feel? And it's that whole expectation to like, you wanted a partner, and they're like, yeah, but he has, he wears jeans. I'm like, okay, is that a problem? Well, I just prefer someone that dresses up more, and it's again back to that expectation. So I kind of wanted to have your take on the whole, how do you manifest relationships with expectations? Well, without expectations, I should say, because you're saying really letting go of how it arrives. How do you let that go in a world where we're told how relationships should be all the time?
What makes you happy?
Right.
Okay. Now, contra that. Now, it's interesting you mentioned this because I literally just launched last, I think it was November. I did a class called Soulmate Secrets.
Oh.
And
is that on YouTube?
No, it is not. It was a one-off. Well, it's actually 2-off class now because I got one coming up end of January or middle of January. But it was done. I was asked to do a joint venture with the subscribers for numerologist.com and astrology.tv. And I've been looking at this concept of soulmates for a while because we have a lot of courses on attraction and dating and things of that nature, but we never looked at the spiritual aspects of it. And we didn't really put a program out on that. And so I wanted to kind of, because I was curious, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to see, I knew we had tools. I just wanted to see how we could get those tools into people who would never consider them from the other marketing angles that we tend to promote things. And so I created this program called Soulmate Secrets. And one of the things that was dramatically clear right from the get-go was that people don't understand the difference between a drug addiction and long-term love. B, they actually don't have a conscious idea of what makes them happy. And so one of the very first things, there's other things, but let me start with those. Remind me to talk about dealing with people who have potential, which is something we don't do anymore. One of the things that you have to do if you want a mate that truly makes you happy without all the codependency issues that go with it, is you need to make your life as awesome as humanly possible for you. Yeah. Because if you're not enjoying life, if you need somebody else to make your life complete, you're not living your life well enough. Okay, it's really that nobody can be responsible for making you happy except you. So it's a hard pill for people to swallow, but this is the work. We come into this place Brent Bound lovingly calls trauma school Earth. We come into this place.
I call it hell, but that's even
you're not far off, right?
Purgatory, hell, same thing.
This is how we learn. One of the dumbest and smartest decisions I ever made. Back when I was, I'd say somewhere between 9 and 11 years. 11 years old seemed to be a big deal for me. I was going through my biblical phase. I was reading the Bible a lot. I came across this story about King Solomon. And I'd known enough from my studies and my flirtations with the occult that he was this big, famous magician, but he was also like one of my favorite books at the time was King Solomon's Mines. That's actually how I found out. He was like the richest dude in the world, right? I didn't know as much about his magical side as I did that he was like the richest guy in the old world. And so I was like, and I'm reading in the Bible about this guy, and it says that when the angels of the Lord asked him what he wanted, that he could have anything he wanted, he said, grant me wisdom. And my little 11-year-old self, I sat back and go, he asked God for wisdom, got everything. Seems like a good deal to me. Dear God, grant me wisdom. And from that moment on, God proceeded to take my life and wipe his buttocks with it. Because one of the ways, and why? How do we get wisdom?
Experience.
Yeah. Good experiences or not so good experiences. Right? We tend to learn better from the not so good experiences. So as I look back on my life, people think I have all this, but no, I guess got my ass kicked over and over and over again. And I had to pick myself up from and learn things. Right. And in the process, somewhere along the way, people think I acquired wisdom. I just think I acquired a better wardrobe, but, but we'll see. But my point, circling back, one of the things we realized very early on is that people don't know what makes them happy. They think they know, because have you ever written a book or written anything, Sheryne? Okay. Yeah. So one of the things that they'll tell you when you're learning to write, and I've studied writing in a lot of different ways and from a lot of different teachers. One of the things they will tell you is that once you've written something, put it in a box somewhere. Don't look at it for a week or two. Come back and then read it from the back to the front. And people go, why from the back to the front? It's because if you read it the way you wrote it, your brain will fill in all the inconsistencies, all the grammatical errors, and you'll think it's perfect, and there's holes in it everywhere. Now, metaphysically speaking, I call that process the externalization filter. When you create an intention in your mind, your brain fluffs out all the inconsistencies, all the unrealistic expectations and things. It's just in this one happy place, right? Because you're in your mind. People love being in their mind. Well, a lot of people move through the world with this idea that, well, I'll know it when I see it. Well, you probably won't. Because you have this idealized version of it in your head that doesn't match the refracted version of it on the outside. Have you ever seen water or sunlight going into a fish tank? Mm-hmm. Right? Does it go in straight? No, it refracts. So, if this is the edge of the water, the sunlight beam enters the top of the water here, but it shoots over, all of a sudden it's over here, and it looks like there's two different beams or something happened. Well, we are light beings. Everything from source is just a difference in the density coming down. And every time light passes through a dense medium, it refracts. Well, you are the ultimate version of a prism, a spiritual prism. And so what you created here is different as it passes through these other layers of you. And so what happens is what you see as perfect in here isn't going to manifest out here. You can get close. So the way you do that, you have to push it through that externalization filter. So you have to get to the things that are most important, you absolutely have to be happy and satisfied and fulfilled in your life on paper. Push them out of you so you can objectively look at them in this reality. And you ever notice that what seemed like a great thing to say or do in your head, the moment you put it on the page, doesn't seem quite so perfect anymore? Mm-hmm. There you have it. So people move through the world with this idealized idea or checklist of what they want, and they think they'll know they get it. And they're always checking to see if people match up, right? And we talk about this in some of our course called the emotional bonding checklist or the emotional motivation checklist. But people do that in context. But they never sit down and say, okay, what do I absolutely have to have in my life to be happy, satisfied, and fulfilled? And what's important about that? And how do I know when I'm getting it? And one of the things that happened when we made all of the students, we had like 22, 23 students in that class. When we made them do that work, they got such clarity on things that they thought they understood. And all of a sudden their manifestation, the time span went from this to this, because they had a roadmap, they had a checklist, they had a series of parameters and boundaries in their life that were so nebulous before anybody could violate them or not meet them or not satisfy them. Because if you don't know what you need and want, how can you expect other people to do it? How can you sort for the people that in the long term, once you get past the oxytocin and dopamine rush, that short-term drug addiction, right? Which is what happens. When we meet someone, your body secretes all these chemicals that are the exact same chemicals and the exact same pathways that would be active in a cocaine addiction. Okay, it's going to happen, and it's supposed to. But in that moment, you're going through what we call in hypnosis trance logic. You're seeing the world through partner-colored glasses. All the things that would be red flags.
We're gonna walk into the sunset and rule the world together.
Yes, and I blame romance novels for that, by the way.
Hallmark movies.
Yeah. My point though is that you think that this chemical rush that you get is going to stay. And biologically, it simply doesn't. It's replaced with something else. And a lot of people don't understand this. And so what happens is they move through these, they jump from one dopamine rush to the next, thinking that that's why they're unsuccessful, because they don't understand that those chemicals are supposed to subside. But one of the problems is that the people that they're having those rushes with aren't good for them because they're not sorting. They're not sorting for them. And what happens is, because you don't know what you need or what you want, you don't know what this person, if this person satisfies the other criteria beyond just triggering a dopamine rush in you. And so you start making exceptions and allowances for this person. You look at the person across from you, and little angel on your shoulder says, "Oh, just the right steps. Few good suggestions. He could be awesome." Right? You see the potential in this person as a partner, but if they just had your guidance, they could actualize all these things. And you never stop to realize from, well, maybe he doesn't want that. Maybe he or she isn't going to do that because it's not it's not their golden path. It's not what they want. And so what happens is you commit yourself to a relationship with a person before you've actually tested this person to see if they're a long-term fit. And you can do that in as little as 20 minutes if you have the right techniques.
I was going to say, how do you do that?
3 magic questions protocol. It was designed for women to be used on men for exactly that purpose. But one of the problems that we have is we look at the potential of the person and we fall in love with that potential. We fall in love with the expectation of who that person could be. When you're on a date with somebody, when you're in a relationship with somebody, if you want to know how happy you're going to be 20 years from then with that person, imagine this person will be exactly the same person 20 years from now as he is in front of you. And if the answer is ew, get out now. Yeah. Get out now, because so many of us, and men and women are both guilty of this.
Yeah.
Just the right tweaks, just the right guidance. No, if the person in front of you isn't good enough for you 20 years from now, they don't need to be in your life. Right.
And that's so tough because society, I think too, this comes into social constructs, tells us that, that they're going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's never going to happen. Can't happen.
Right. And so people sit down and they're like, well, he didn't text me back right away. So, he's emotionally unavailable. So next. And it's like, what? Like, maybe he was busy. Maybe he was, who knows? Maybe like that's insane. And then society expects that, oh, okay, like this relationship, this person that is sitting across from you is going to be perfect. And don't worry if they're not, because they will be. And
exactly. That's expectation again, isn't it?
Right. And what you're saying is like, no, what you see is what you get.
If this person doesn't make you happy, and this is an exercise that you have to do. Can you be happy if this person doesn't, and they will change, of course, but usually not in the directions you think and not to the degree that you want. As you look at this person across from you, can you imagine yourself being with this exact person, this exact way 20 years from now? And will you be happy? And if the answer is not at least a qualified yes, you should probably really reconsider A, your expectations, or B, your criteria, right? Because especially the first few months, you're making decisions through a cocktail of hormones that are going to subside over time, whether you want them to or not. And a different set of hormones will take its place, but it won't be the same massive peak. And if you're someone who's what I call dopamine dominant, you spend most of your life looking for those highs. And
is that a thing?
That's a thing.
Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, okay. This is based on the work of Dr. Helen Fisher. She's a researcher for Match.com and Chemistry.com. She was the first one to create a personality indicator tool based purely on the dominance of hormonal pathways in the human body. And she isolated that there were 4 basic pathways that all humans possess, and the ratio of them will determine what kind of a life you lead, what kind of partners make you happy. And so she broke, and these 4 character types.
It's an actual test you can take?
Yes, Fisher type indicator.
Fisher type indicator, okay.
You can also get the book Why Him, Why Her. And probably, with the exception of maybe the Myers-Briggs type indicator, she's probably had more people take her test than anybody in history, because her test is used exclusively by Match.com, Chemistry.com. So it's literally been tested on millions of people in every culture that has the internet. Okay. And so you have 4 basic personality types. Now, each type has 4 different hormonal pathways because they're human, but one tends to predominate. So you have dopamine dominant or dopamine norepinephrine dominant types. You have testosterone dominant, you have estrogen dominant, and you have serotonin dominant. And your dopamine norepinephrine dominant are the adventurers of the world. They're constantly seeking the highs and the lows. They're sensation seeking. So they can, on the pathological side, have a high degree of sociopathy or narcissistic behaviors, right? Right. But that's only on the extreme.
Are you calling me a narcissist?
I would never call you a narcissist to your face.
Yeah.
But anybody who's on social media is a narcissist. Okay. Why are we doing it? For attention.
Yeah.
Look at me,
us.
right?
Yeah.
You know, and our culture has, in spite of flames and trolls to the contrary, our society has propagated that particular character trait.
Yeah.
By the behaviors that it rewards. We've become, and we're all attention-seeking creatures. It's just a question of degree. But dopamine people are more adventure-seeking. They're sensation-seeking. So they'll climb mountains. They'll do skydiving, hang gliding. They'll anything that results in a change of state. It's more they're more fiery in terms of the Chinese 5-element system. Very fiery people, very creative people. Doesn't make them bad. They just don't try to strap them down unless it's part of something kinky. But you know, but they're just very fiery from a Chinese 5-element perspective. They're in the Barden system and the Hermetic system, and in Hippocrates 4-element or 5-element system, they would be known as the sanguines. No.
Yeah, they would be sanguines.
Sanguines, yeah. So they're sanguine, right? So you have this norepinephrine dopamine dominant, which is analogous to the sanguine, which is analogous to the fire element. So you can see how it just goes right across. And characteristically, behaviorally, that's how they play out. Then you have testosterone-driven people who are more what we call woody or choleric, I believe is what, right? And so these people have very similar tendencies to dopaminergic people, except they're much more focused. They're much more driven. They're the directing type. They want to take charge, and they can get along with dopamine people as long as they're aligned in the same direction. But the minute the dopaminers go off on tangents, they get pissed, right? So these people are very focused. These people are the metal wood element. You have serotonin dominant people who are classic, ardent, adamant traditionalists. This is the way Grandma Joe did it.
Is that melancholic?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Melancholic or what's the other one? I have the chart. Actually, I don't have the chart. Actually, I do have the chart. I made this chart for my my face reading people. Let me see if I can find it.
This is so informative. This is like a masterclass.
You were actually the first one to see this, so it's outside of my classes, and it's a work in progress. But let me see if I can find it.
How you were able to go all across the charts is amazing.
This is because of you, Sheryne.
Because the book that I recommend that you read.
Recommended had a ton of references in it that set off my Snyder alarm, and I followed that bunny trail. This is what I got. So I don't know if you can. Do I have permission to share a screen? You need to enable screen sharing if you want to see this.
I don't know how I do that.
Go to participants or security. I don't have a security thing though.
Oh.
I don't have the same panel that you. Okay, you made me the host. All right, let me see what I got here. See if I can share screen now. Might let me do it. Oh, it'll let me do it now. Okay. So just to show you really quick, I don't know if you can see.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
Okay. So these are, this is they're labeled on the type indicator, but this is the hormonal pathway that is dominant compared to the rest. And then this is the Fisher categorization. If you were to look at her, she would say explorers do this and explorers do that, which is analogous to the sanguine or the fire element in Chinese 5-element theory. You have social norm compliant. These people are serotonin dominant. These people are ardent traditionalists. They don't like change. They don't respond to change, and they will find things the same. So they're more of a yin energy. Fisher called them builders. They're more the melancholic type, and these have earth and metal tendencies. These people can be very nurturing, but they're very rigid in the rules of society and the people they associate with. These people only want to associate with people like themselves. They can, but in those in groups, they can be very nurturing, very just bend over backwards, just this is how they are. The tough-minded people are more testosterone driven. And they're very direct. They're the very woody metal people. Now you can always tell a metal person because they're very bossy. They have big cheekbones. Okay. And again, depending on whether they lean more towards the earth element or the fire element, they'll be more aggressive and or more rigid in their, so we can talk about that, but there's a direct correlation. And then you have the pro-social or the estrogen dominant people that Fisher calls negotiators. These are more of a yin type. And she classifies people by a primary and a secondary. So you could be like an explorer negotiator, or you could be a builder director.
I was going to say, usually they're the,
yeah, but here's what's interesting. Since the course is about relationships, let me go ahead and close this out. One of the things about relationships is people are always asking is, do opposites attract, or is it like versus like? And the answer according to Fisher is yes. And going back to that chart I just showed you, explorers are always happiest with explorers. Directors are always better with are builders who are the serotonin dominant, like other serotonin dominant. So they're the like to like people. The other two, wood people are attracted to negotiators, or directors are attracted to negotiators. Negotiators are attracted or have a better pairing with directors. So now you have opposites attract. Attract, and it's based on these different mixings of hormonal pathways. Now, when you take the Fisher type indicator, you're going to get a ratio of a numerical ratio of, out of 48, you scored this in your director, you scored this in your explorer, and it's these ratios that'll give you a bit of an idea of, kind of a window into your own biology, for lack of a better word, and how it's affecting your personality. But there's direct vibrational correlates to this, because everything that is solid is yin, but it's just denser energy. And so there's a quality scale and a quantity scale, metaphysically speaking, that's holographically manifested throughout the human being. But one of the problems that we have in metaphysics, and this is, I think, one of the biggest reasons why we aren't as a community, we aren't as consistent in our results as we could be, is that we try to study the metaphysical universe to understand the physical universe. I think we got it wrong. I think my personal belief is, if you want to really understand the metaphysical universe, really understand the physical one.
Wow.
As above, so below, right? And so you get things that are workable and practical in this dimension, and then you can, through the process of chunking up and chunking down your intuition or pattern recognition, whatever word you want to put to it, you can extrapolate the metaphysical principle on up the scale. And that's a lot of what I've done is I was, like many people, I was indoctrinated into these very metaphysical, airy-fairy, vague things, and it was like almost luck when something did manifest or something did work. And then I kind of went through my disillusionment phase. And it's interesting in retrospect, because when I chose my acupuncture school, I chose the acupuncture school with the greatest degree of Western medicine incorporated into the curriculum.
Wow.
I was actually quite disillusioned with energetics when I went to acupuncture school, because a lot of the things that I had been taught weren't working. And so I said, look, there's got to be another way to do this. There's got to be another reason how and why this works. Maybe Western medicine has those answers. They didn't, but they had more. They had more answers.
Yeah.
And because I have this weird shaped hairline, which means I have an extrapolative integrative thought process. I started again taking all these little Legos from all these different disciplines, and all of a sudden, what came together was something greater than the sum of the parts. But and so that, but again, you were part of that process, because that chart that you see, I couldn't have put together without the little nudges.
Well, that's cool,
right? But that's how it works.
Dr. David Snyder. Changing lives, folks, changing lives. Okay, going back, I just wanted to touch a little bit, about tips and tricks for people.
Some tricks.
Talking about expectations, creating the reality that you want, and manifesting. What do you got for us? A lot of people come to me and they ask me the question, how do I get what I want? How do I use my mind to manifest? How do I change my mood? How do I always be in a good mood? It's probably the dopamine seekers that are going after that. But, how do you manifest what the life you want without the disappointment? That truly is the question I get all the time. Is people come to me and they're disappointed and they want something and they can't get it and they don't know why they don't have it. How do we get it?
Well, first and foremost, what's stopping you? Are you stopping you, or are events stopping you? Is the locus of attention or the locus of control inside or outside? It's very simple. One of the things I see over and over and over again with people who actually achieve is that they achieve to the degree that they realize that their life is a result of what they do, not what is done to them. It's a result of the choices they make based on the feedback and the variables they get from the universe, rather than burying a key at a crossroads, or putting a horseshoe above the door, or creating a vision board. Those things can be helpful, but if you don't balance them with actual action in the material world, if you don't take the action to become the person who can have those things, it's not going to manifest. Because even though anything is possible, there are certain things that are more plausible and possible than others, right? I had this discussion with a lady the other day who spent her life studying metaphysics and the occult and law of attraction and Kabbalah and stuff like that. She was telling me how broke she was and how she's trying to manifest money so she can move out of her place and do all these things. And I said, well, how are you actually going about that? She goes, I'm trying to win the lottery.
I've had about a handful of clients come my way, and that has been their answer.
Yeah. And the problem is you live in a quantum universe where every thought matters. So if you've got 30 million people all trying to win the same lottery, right? Well, unless you've got a lot more amplitude behind that and your blocks are out of the way, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to have more, you're more likely to manifest something by becoming a person who's worth it than trying to get something for nothing, which is what, unfortunately, people who embrace this concept of the law of attraction are doing. They think that the law of attraction is the easy way. It's not easy. It's different. And when you start on this path of what I call self-directed evolution, which is the law of attraction, it's alchemy, period. Yeah. That's all it is. You're embarking on a path of bringing your neurology, your spiritual neurology, as well as your physical neurology, into a deeper level of connection and intercommunication with the larger macro or the non-local universe. And so what happens is your neurology becomes an extension of that, and vice versa. But you still have to do some work. The Kabbalists say that in order for the light, which has everything in it, to be revealed, it must be concealed. And what they mean by that is that there has to be a physical vessel, either a physical object or a set of actions in the universe that open a window for that energy to be emerged and be expressed. So if you want to be a doctor, we'll go back to the whole medical question, right? And you can put on your vision board all these things, but you never get off the fucking couch. and enroll, you can't be a doctor.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not willing to, if you don't have the mindset of whatever it takes to become that person, your law of attraction stuff is going to be sparse at best. It's going to be random at best. So one of the things that has to happen is you have to be aware of your dominant thoughts. Now, the law of attraction tells us that you will attract into your world the people, places, and events that are in harmony with your dominant thoughts. There's a problem with that. Most people don't know what their dominant thoughts actually are. They think that it's the thoughts they're aware of consciously, but it's not. It's the secret identities, beliefs, and little movies and background feelings and sensations that are below the threshold of conscious awareness, that are on an endless pilot, an autopilot. Like we talked about this in trauma resolution. When you encounter an event that triggers your trauma survival system, it's almost like the old Ghostbusters where they opens up this little trap, grabs all these memories and feelings, sucks it in this little pocket dimension in your body, almost like that Ghostbusters trap does. And what you don't realize, and people don't realize, is that that little fragment of your consciousness is holographic. It knows everything you knew up until that moment, but nothing beyond it. And it's on an endless loop. And it has a frequency and a vibration connected to it. And your body will start to store these things in the same location based on what they have in common. And they'll take on more and more and more of a frequency as they build up. And those are below the threshold of your conscious awareness. And that's actually the things that are tainting and in many cases skewing your manifestation skills. For example, and I'm sure you've had this experience, but we've all like done affirmations, right? Mm-hmm. You ever notice sometimes, like if you're doing this really cool affirmation, like there's this big positive feeling you get from having it. And then in the background, there's this little nagging type of a feeling. That's what you want to be aware of, because the big feeling that you're feeling up front is the obvious surface level thought. But that little icky background feeling is the dominant thought. It's the part of you that's locked below the threshold of conscious awareness that's related to this part manifesting. And if you don't chase that feeling down, it will sabotage you. And so this is part of the alchemy of manifestation. You have to know what your dominant thoughts are. In order to know what they are, you have to first realize how they manifest in your body. They're not the ones you can consciously think of. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that pop up automatically when you're doing something else, right? Because they're on an endless loop below the threshold of conscious awareness. They have a vibrational frequency to them, which generates a certain type of phenomena. And in order to get past those, you have to summon up an extraordinarily large amount of positive emotion and will to get by it. Or you can just go in, and like I talked to many people before, most people move through the world with the equivalent of a jet engine and an anchor strapped to their back. And they just think, if I just add more thrust to the engine, I'll get there faster. But they don't realize that the more thrust they add to the engine, the more drag they create on the anchor.
It's so fun that you bring this up. I literally had a client the other day. She came to me. She's a real estate agent and she is really struggling financially. And she shouldn't be. She puts in hours of work. She's done all the right things. She's connected with the right people. And funny enough, she came to me because she can't get over her ex and she wants to find the love of her life. Classic story. Mm-hmm. And her belief system, and she's mad about it. And she's mad that she doesn't have a partner. And she's mad, especially doesn't have a financial partner.
Right.
Right. And so she's like, the belief that I would be happier, safer, wealthier, better if I had a partner. And where's my partner? And every time I talk to her, she messages me quite often through coaching. And she's like, yeah, well, you know what else was a problem today? I didn't have a partner to help me do this. And I didn't have, I have another bill come in and it would be really nice. And I'm like, and then she comes to me and goes, I don't know why I'm succeeding in business. And I said, I have a little sneaky suspicion that if you were, we have two conflicting beliefs here. Mm-hmm. Your dominant thought is I make money until I have a partner, or I can't make money unless I have a partner, or I can't make money period because I need a partner. Whatever that is, it's all mm-hmm. around the partner. And I have a sneaky suspicion that your business isn't going to take off until that happens, unless you change the belief and the thought, exactly. What you're saying, the dominant, but she doesn't even realize this. And I finally said to her, I said, wouldn't it be really conflicting if you what would happen if you were really successful in real estate? She's like, I'd have a lot of money. It's like, so you wouldn't really, you could hire someone to clean your garage. You wouldn't need a man. No, I wouldn't. Well, that would conflict your belief that you need a man.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I said, you not being successful in your real estate business is validating the belief that you need a man.
Mhm.
Right. And I was like, and if you become successful in your business, it's going to invalidate belief that you need a man.
Mhm.
So let's get rid of the belief you need a man, or, like, change your perspective, change your value system, whatever that is. And I know we do a number of things to do that, but she had no idea. But I love that you're bringing this to the surface, because a lot of the times people say, I'm not getting what I want. I don't know why. And it's like, because there's a dominant thought, a subconscious thought that's driving you.
Absolutely.
Right? That's
And what's
creating that vibrational frequency. That's like, I'm like, honey, you're repelling clients because you're coming across like you're a widow.
yeah.
Like you're a poor invalid that, can't even pick up a pen without a man.
Wealth is running from her right now.
Yeah, literally. And I'm just like, and I even catch myself too when I'm in really stable relationships, my finances drop, because there has been a belief that I've had to work through for a long time, that I can only make money when I'm alone in the desert by myself.
Wow. Okay.
Right? I can only
make a good time to change that.
Right? It's like and so I made a lot of money during the pandemic because I was alone in the desert. But when I have community, I like my finances drop, because it's like, oh, I can't make money when I'm in community. It's like, it's weird, messed up scarcity mindset, which I've now recognized and balanced, because this is what I do for a living. And so I recognize it in myself. But yeah, people need to understand that we validate our beliefs on an unconscious level.
Absolutely.
Right? We manifest that.
And here's the thing, is I'm a face reader, and I do a lot with face reading. And one of the things that my teacher Lillian taught me many, many years, and I knew this already from my therapy work, but people are amazingly blind to their own patterns.
Yeah.
They're just completely oblivious to the same pattern happening over and over again. I make fun of it when I talk about dating the same person with a different face, right?
I had a colleague say that the other day.
But the truth is that we perpetuate these patterns of I can't be financially solvent without a financial partner. Well, like I said before, if you're not willing to be standing on your own 2 feet, no amount of waiting for a partner, and I guarantee you, if that partner does manifest, you're going to be miserable.
They're going to be poor. It's good. The universe is going to play a trick on you.
It's going to backfire on you.
Your partner, and he's dirt poor, and you're like, wait, what? In fact, you now have to support him. You
can now make more money because you actually have a deeper reason to do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
The thing is we these patterns, they start off. Let me change my screen view here really quick. All right, these patterns. The way my teacher described it were like spirals. Like they can start off like if you're here and it's out here, and it kind of passes through you, and you have this issue, and maybe you ignore it, and you ignore it that first time, and the next orbit it comes around, it's a little bit closer, right? And it gets a little bit more intense, but you just kind of ignore it and not pay attention to it. And with each subsequent orbit, it gets closer and closer to being embodied, until you get to the point where you can't actually ignore it anymore, and you have to deal with it. And
isn't biblically that like going around the mountain? Is that like the Philistines going around the mountain one more time? We just quite going through the desert for 40 years.
I don't recall that story. It could be, because there's a lot of metaphor in there. But the interesting is that when you actually address the problem, it starts to spiral out in the inverse. So like you'll resolve it in the body, and then it'll start to orbit out.
Oh, that's good news.
A similar situation will happen, and you'll recognize it, and it won't be nearly as triggering or traumatic, and you'll just kind of get through it. And then it'll pass, it'll be further out, and you'll recognize the pattern again. But it won't even be even less of an issue until finally it's so far off your radar, it's not even a thing anymore. And that's how my teacher explained this inverse and exverse.
You got to go within. You got to go towards it.
And Chinese medicine actually had similar stories where these high level physicians who could see the entire human energy field, they would tell the emperor, there's a disease out here in your field that's going to kill you in 10 years if you don't do something about it. And the emperor kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And then finally the emperor's on his deathbed. He says, why didn't you warn us about this? Right. And, but we are amazingly blind a lot to our own patterns. And that's sometimes why people like you and me can be so important, because we have the outsider's perspective And we can see these patterns. And if we have the skill sets, hopefully we can guide them to a revelation. And in the process of that revelation, they become willing to make a change. Because my experience has been until they realize it has to start inside of them and the locus of control is in them, they'll be constantly looking west, running west, looking for a sunrise. And sometimes people just have to suffer. They have to just beat against the wall and beat against the wall until they have this epiphany. But in terms of manifestation, there's two areas that we need to look at. A is what are your dominant thoughts that are impeding the manifestation of it? And that goes to the identity level. Who are you? Are you the person who can have it? If not, what do you need to do to become that person? Right? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need to get education? We separate that into what I call skill set versus mindset. And in terms of skill set versus mindset, it's mindset. If you know exactly what steps to take, where to go, who to pay, who to call, when to do it, and you're just not doing it, that's mindset. But if you're raring to start, you're chomping at the bit, you're salivating, and you have no idea where to direct any of that energy, that's a skill set. Both are fixable, and one often masquerades as the other. So do you have a belief system that's in harmony with the direction you want to go? Are there dominant thoughts getting in your way? You need to clear those up. What actions are you willing to take to become that person? Are you willing to take the time limit off? Because like for me, I've only very recently become Dr. Snyder, right? I didn't actually start medical school. I think it was end of 2017 or 2018, right? So I was already in my 50s, when I started that doctorate program. You know what? It's 2021. We're going on 2022. I'm going to be level 56 next year, right? Whether I'd gone to medical school or not, I'm still going to be 56 next year. The difference is, will I be 56 with a doctorate degree or will I be 56 without one? And so this is the idea. I'm too X, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm not smart enough, I'm not blah, 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 blah.
Time will pass anyways.
Time's going to pass. And if you can entertain the idea and you're willing to do whatever it takes, and the universe will test you on this. This is one of the big ones. The universe will test your resolve. Then you can be and do and have anything you want because you're willing to become the person that can have it. Now, here's what's interesting. And this is, again, the paradox of manifestation. When you embody that attitude, everything, in many cases, often the distance that appear to be stumbling blocks or boulders in the path, as you make up your mind to go relentlessly over, around, and through them, regardless of what it takes, the universe conspires to remove them from your path or send you off in a different direction that gets you there faster and allows you to learn things you couldn't learn. Or when you get up to those big boulders, you find out they're made of styrofoam. Right. But it doesn't manifest until you become absolutely relentless. When you're willing to do whatever it takes without violating your values, it's important. And sometimes your values are the problem, which is something we talked about in Soulmate Secrets too, because one of the things that happens is people have a value tree, and in their value tree, like if there's 10 things in their value tree, money's like 7. Oh, I know. No. I know exactly what we're talking. This was my problem. When I did my value system. And if anybody's listening, I know you teach a course on this. I do this privately with clients because this was mind blowing, because I'm like, why am I not making money? My money was like number 10. I don't even think it was on the list. Right. And I learned that if it's not in the top 2 of your value system in entrepreneurship or business or finances, if that's your goal, that's a problem. Right. Very much. And so it was like, I had to put money, I think it's like number 2 or number 3. Hey, I'd say if it's not at least in your top 5, you're probably broke. Yeah, totally. Right. Absolutely. And, that was mind blowing. That actually set me up for so much success. It was one of those, assessments that you do that you're like, wow, that actually was very helpful for the rest of my life. So I do offer those, the values, the value tree, the value systems. Absolutely agree with that. Because one of the things that sometimes happens with people is you can also have values conflicts. Like you value freedom, right? Oh, I see this all the time. right? You value freedom more than anything else. And if you have to do something for money, that's something you have to do. And so because it conflicts with freedom, you don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? So there needs to be some, again, it's all about clarity. If you think about it,
Yeah.
we can take the tools from NLP and modify them a little bit and contextualize them. But there needs to be, you need to have a value system, which is part of your identity. Your value system are the pillars that support the identity that you move through this world in. And if they're not in alignment, or there's confusion about how you satisfy them, your life is going to reflect that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good stuff. Okay. It's been over an hour. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I think we should probably do another podcast. I don't know how busy you are. I know you're really busy, but I would love for you to talk about, I'd love for you to talk about trauma and how it affects the brain and the body, and also talking more about the ego, esoteric stuff. I love going in deeper into that. So if the folks want, and if you're willing, I'd love to do another podcast, but for today, let's wrap up, and where can people find you? What course are you teaching next? Because you got a ton. Where can people find you?
Yeah, our brand new website is davidsnydernlp.com. And we've actually divided the website up into what do you want to learn about pages. So there's pages on charisma, persuasion, and influence. There's pages on law of attraction. There's pages on self-help and getting over trauma, resolving trauma. So there's whole pages devoted to those. There's also a podcast page where we actually have a list of podcasts that you can just watch on the screen. We have a fully filled out shop. You can shop to your heart's content. For those of you who want to test or try before you buy, we have this massive YouTube channel that has 178,000 subscribers. And last time I looked, we were close to 300 videos that were public, and I think I have another 150 to 200 that are still unlisted or private, and we're constantly creating more. So there's a lot of content there, and it's
even on your Instagram. Like, folks, if you just go, what's your Instagram handle?
David Snyder NLP at Instagram.com.
Yeah, he has a ton of snippets, videos that you can just scroll through, binge watch, whatever you want to do. So if you want to learn,
I'm new to this. Even though I've been around social media for a long time, I'm still very new to it.
Well, it's always changing and upgrading. Yeah. And
we also have an events page. Our first event of 2022 will be an event I love called the Self-Mastery Supercharger, which is our entire identity by design system taught as a self-hypnosis course that you can just do the entire 7 stages of personality transformation in 7.5 minutes.
Personality transformation in 7.5 minutes. There you have it, folks. You want a new you, new year, new you? Just there, right there. Just go to David Snyder, NLP. What is it? What's your
DavidSnyderNLP.com. That's DavidSnyderNLP.com. One more time with feeling. DavidSnyderNLP.com.
That's amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me, for being on.
Thank you for being on.
Thanks for being here today. Thanks so much, David. All right, folks. If you have any other questions, you can get a hold of me, Sheryne, SHRYNE, at innermindperformance.com, or check out my webpage at innermindperformance.com. All right. Have a good day, folks.
All right.
I need you to push stop.
You need me to push stop? I can do that.
Because you are host now.
Yes. And let me